You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show. The preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Hey, we're coming here with another great podcast. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for being here. Be sure to refer the show to your friends, families, relatives. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss. You go to iTunes, give us 5 stars over there. You can also see us on goodreads.com/Chris Voss. Anywhere on the interwebs, you can find myself or the Chris Voss Show as well. Today, we had an amazing multi-book author on the show. Cameron Lee Cowan is on the show with us today. He's the author of a multitude of books. Let's see, What the Hell is Going On? A Primer to Understanding Our World in the Age of Trump. He also has what he calls an unfinished coloring book, just so you're aware, that is published. When I first thought, I was like, oh, he hasn't published it, but he has actually. And Cast Iron, a novel, a paperback that came out January 6, 2020, which is kind of an interesting irony there. We'll talk to him about that. So he's going to be on the show. He is a writer, thinker, and human being navigating the streets of Seattle. He has ran 3 magazines, worked in fashion, been a stand-up comedian, and writes about business, politics, and life among his many talents. Welcome to the show, Cameron. How are you?
Hi, Chris. I'm doing very well. And yourself? What a commodious welcome. I hope I can live up to the hype.
Well, we'll see here. We've got time to do it. We still have time. So welcome to the show. Give us your .coms, wherever you want people to look you up on the interwebs.
Yes, well, please join us over at CameronJournal.com. That's Cameron like the actress, journal.com. And we have all sorts of stuff when it comes to business trends, politics. I live stream election coverage every 2 years, so I'll be doing a 6-hour live stream of the midterms this fall. And so sign up for the email list. Check us out. There's something new on the blog every single day. And then if you want to hear more random ramblings from me, the best place is Twitter, which is just my name at Cameron Cowan. And then if you for some reason need visuals, Instagram is also at Cameron Cowan. So come along for the ride. I'm always posting news, interesting stuff, things that I find along the way, and we just kind of go on the journey together.
Nice. And you talk about a lot of different things in the Cameron Journal. You talk about politics, advice, life, essays, interviews you have, masculinity, money and economy, media writing. You cover quite the gambit.
Well, yes. So as I jokingly kind of say, like, I am autistic, so I've literally created a brand so I can just write about my various and sundry hyperfixations. And so, I find there are so many things that are sort of interconnected. So when I get a new interest and develop a new expertise, and I'm kind of like, oh, I'd really like to write more about that, we add yet another category to the Cameron Journal. So yeah, and also it's important to have slots for all sorts of things, because I have all these ideas and things that I think are interesting, or things that I want to share with people, or also just sometimes sharing in struggles. Like, I have a series of articles called Hi, my name is Cameron and I'm ... And I have one on Hi, my name is Cameron and I have gynecomastia, because I have my own tits. I made them at home. And then I have one on autism, and I have one on being fat, because I've been fat forever. Like forever. If you're not watching this, I'm a giant 400-pound brown dude. I look like Troy Polamalu, that football player. And with my hair this length, I really look like him right now. And so and it is something where, all these different journeys, there are so many things that just people don't necessarily write and talk about. Like, there's a lot of men that suffer from gynecomastia, which is breast tissue on your chest, which is not supposed to be there if you're a man. And I was kind of like, you know what? Let's get rid of the shame. I'll write about it. I'll just come right out and talk about it, the struggles, the difficulties, all this type of thing. Because you go online and these guys, you know, are kind of like, oh my God, my chest isn't flat as a board. No woman will ever want me. And I'm kind of like, dudes, I've had tits my whole life, and I used to take girls by appointment in college.
Nice.
I had, as my friend Jenna says, she's like, Cameron used to have his afternoon girl and then his late night girl. And I'm kind of like, so it's like, if your chest is a little bit fleshy, you can still get laid. Like, it's not a huge problem. So I'm kind of like, let me just write about this stuff. So that's kind of what we do at the Cameron Journal is I come up with stuff, I find stuff where things happen in my life, and I write about it just to kind of dispel the shame, the issues around it, give people comfort, make them feel better about it, feel like there's someone out there going through it the same as them. And especially like in the manhood masculinity space, it can be hard to have those conversations. It can be hard to get guys to open up and talk. So I kind of like to write about that stuff in a way where it's just kind of this open space where we can have those conversations, be vulnerable, say the things we might not necessarily say in front of other people, and go from there. So yeah, that's.
Do you find you
Cameron
spend a
Journal.
lot out of all those things that I covered? Do you find that you spend a lot of majority of time on men's issues or politics or?
I think the biggest category is politics because that's kind of my home wheelhouse. So I have 2 degrees in political science, got my master's when I was 23 from Norwich University, America's oldest military college. So yeah, I think the biggest category is politics. Business is starting to catch up because I'm developing that side of the business. So business and politics is the most. The masculinity category is new. I just launched the masculinity category 6 months ago because I used to do most of my writing about men for other people, like the Good Men Project and LGBT publications. So the masculinity category is actually kind of new. So we're still building that up, you know, at home on the Cameron Journal because I used to do it elsewhere. So
there you go. Now you have a podcast as well, I see.
Yes, the Cameron Journal podcast. Season 2 is out now. I recorded 11 produced episodes before I left in June. So this season we've covered how the West was won. We've covered the death of two-door cars, the interstate system, railroad, the transcontinental railroad, high-speed rail, the death penalty, and a couple other fun topics, including the TV show Mr. Robot. And then we also do interviews with interesting people. So
awesome.
I just interviewed a guy yesterday who has designed a new type of commodity market that discourages speculation. In fact, it makes it almost impossible. Yes, it's really fascinating. Like he's a recreational mathematician, and he has designed this sort of commodities market that makes it basically impossible to speculate on commodities. So yeah, so in between the produced episodes where I take an hour and talk about something interesting, we talk to really fascinating people. So
yeah,
it
looks like you have 97 episodes.
That's about right. Yeah.
And it says here you're an editor-in-chief of Rogues Magazine.
Oh, I need to change that bio. I need to do an audit. Yes, I start in 2019. I started a publication called Rouges Magazine, and we had contributors from all over the world and had editors and all this type of thing. Unfortunately, the pandemic was not kind to us. So yeah, unfortunately, I shut down Rouges at the end of 2020. So yeah, we had a nice 1.5 year run. We had a lot of momentum, but the pandemic was just a lot. And I made the decision to pull the plug and move on. But don't worry, all of the content from Rouges Magazine is archived on medium.com.
Oh, there you go. Medium.com.
Yeah.
That's a great place for stuff.
Yes. I've been on Medium since they first started. I remember when they were like a couple dudes in a basement. Oh yeah, I've been on Medium forever. But yeah, so I took all the content off the website, archived it on my profile on Medium, and so There's some great stuff in there. One of the essays and actually the update to what the hell is going on was first came out in Rouges, and it was about Christian nationalism and the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. And that was one of our more popular pieces, and it's archived on Medium, and it will appear in my next book because the far right Christian nationalist wing of the GOP is genuinely frightening.
Isn't it though? We've had a lot of authors on the show who've written in detail about them.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of what Christian nationalism was or white nationalism was until the day after the election. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? And how did this guy get elected? And my friends were being thrown out of taxis who actually weren't black. They were from what's the country in Iraq we saved that Iraq invaded. One of my friends, she was in a taxi, got thrown out. Kuwait, yeah, she's a Kuwaiti, so she had darker skin. And the day after Trump won, I had gay friends that had their cars painted, Jewish friends that were being attacked. I mean, it was just a wholesale attack on
Bedlam. Yeah,
Bedlam. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, did this country just fucking lose its mind? And
no, Trump just gave it permission to be its true self.
A good point. Yeah. He said, go ahead and say what's in your heart and minds. So, well, let's, as long as we're on that topic, let's get to your book. I was going to go in order of release, but let's move right on to what the hell is going on, a primer to understanding our world in the age of Trump. You published this in October 1st, 2019.
Yes.
Give us an overview of that book. What motivated you to write it?
Yes, well, it was a compilation with some new material of some of my tentpole essays from the predecessor to the Cameron Journal, the Cameron Cowan Show. And I had written these kind of really big essays on genetically modified foods, capitalism, how we the people became we the corporation, 1977, the rise of discounters and deregulation, all these kind of different topics. I wrote about bees, ecology, and then I wrote new essays on education and racism. And so it was basically kind of my goal with it was to create this kind of one-stop shopping resource that was kind of a best of, but also this kind of guidebook to understanding different aspects of kind of what's going on in the world and how we got here. Because some people have different perspectives, or they're just kind of catching up to things. So I kind of wanted to give them okay, if you've not been paying attention, here's everything you need to know.
So is the book a compilation of essays that are all part of how did we get to the age of Trump, or is it a collection of essays and that's kind of one of the main parts or themes as a teaser out to the?
Actually, I don't really address Trump as such until the racism essay. Most of these essays are just addressing different aspects of our world. For example, circling back to our Christian nationalist idea, there's an essay in there I wrote back in 2015 called "The Death of the White Christian Heteronormative Narrative."
Yes.
And in that essay, I argue that the principal problem with America is that our national story is changing in terms of who gets to be an American, who gets to have a voice, who gets to have power. And really the challenge of our time, the challenge of the 21st century for America is, can we be a country with more than one voice at the table? That is the challenge of our time.
You really nailed it on the head. That really is the analogy of what's going on. We've talked about the show. We've had people on the books about the show like yours. I've seen alarmed GOP voters going, in 2050 we're no longer going to have power and we won't be the most dominant majority and we'll be outvoted by minorities. And you're just like, my favorite line is that line from No Country for Old Men: you can't stop what's coming. That's vanity. And
with the way things are going, we can move that up to 2040 now.
Oh, really?
Yes,
oh, well,
yes.
There you go.
Well, here's the problem: the white.
You're going to panic them more.
Yes, well, no, I mean that's actually why they're panicking. The white birth rate is very low. We've had an increase in immigration, modest increase in immigration, and the people who are usually having large families are brown people.
Yeah.
Already America's school system, K through 12 school system, is already majority non-white. If you look at the national demographics, it's already non-white. So we're already on our way, 18 years from now. So we're already basically there, and that's why it's the principal question of our time. Every generation in this country gets to choose who is an American, who is a person who has political power. The choice of our time is if we can be a country and have shared values and ideas while having different skin tones and different national and ethnic backgrounds. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. And let's clarify for people, because I'm not even sure I know what this term means. I have a guess at it. White heteronormative?
Yes.
The death of the white heteronormative. Let's clarify and define that term if you can for me. Because
yes.
I don't even know what it is. I went to public school. Betsy DeVos's public school.
Oh no. Yeah. So heteronormative basically is, so hetero comes from heterosexual, so relationships between opposite sex persons, and the normative is kind of the normal, what one might consider the normal or ordinary state of things. So when we squish these two terms together and create this portmanteau, we basically have this standard of, in the past, for most of America's history, the people who have mattered, the people who've had the power, the people who have set policy have had a couple of things in common. They've been white, straight, Christian, preferably Protestant, not Catholic, unless you're Joe Biden or Jack Kennedy, and male. Women have only had the vote for 102 years. So we can't even really talk about white women to like the 20th century. So when we founded this country, our country was founded by straight white men in their late 20s, primarily large landowners. A third of them owned other human beings. And at that time, you could only vote if you had property, which means you had a certain modicum of wealth. And ever since then, we've ever so slowly expanded the vote and power and all this type of thing till the 20th century, where at least straight white men had the vote, they had the power, they were in government, they got the best jobs, they had the most educational opportunities. Everything was kind of one giant handout. And in the 1960s, we decided that really cuts out a lot of other people. White women, anyone of color, gay people, all this type of thing. And in the subsequent decades, we've tried to kind of add on to that and extend rights and power and employment opportunities and all this type of thing to an increasingly diverse group of individuals. And now we're to a point where the narratives, the myths about our country, and humans live in story, the myths about our country are changing, because now not only are people of color saying, not only do we want education and jobs and housing and opportunities like you have, but we also need to talk about America's history. We need to open up some conversations like what the 1619 Project did at the New York Times. We need to have some truth and reconciliation, to borrow a term from South Africa. We need to have some truth and reconciliation about what has gone on. And so in my essay on racism, I talk about, the losses, the theft, there was one town in Mississippi that burnt down the whole courthouse so they could destroy the property records to steal land from Black people. You start reading these stories and it's like, there is nothing these folks will not do to screw over someone of color.
You saw January 6th, so.
Yes. Oh, if you want to hear me lose it, go listen to the podcast I let out on January 9th, 2021, where I'm kind of like, I called my friend in Russia and she said, how do you not have dictator in Russia? Coup happens, we have dictator. And I'm like, that's because the coup was ran by incompetence. Yes, so we're having this whole, it won't be next time. So we're having this whole change of myth and of story, and we're moving away from the standard of white, straight Christian men. And so that is, And it's really the seminal question of our time. It's very difficult. If you had told me in 2002 that out of the last, between 2008 and 2022, out of the last, what's that, 15 years, we would have a person of color in the White House for 10 of those years, I would have laughed in your face. But thanks to Barack Obama and Kamala Harris, however you feel about her, the fact is that we've had a black man as president, and we have had a woman of color of multi-ethnic background as vice president, and the Democratic Party has twice in a row now delivered diversity to the highest echelons of government. That's a change. And if you really want to know why the Trump world is kind of losing its marbles over there, it's stuff like this. Because it's a potent symbol that people of color are on the march. And it also means that just because you're white doesn't automatically mean you're going to get any and everything anymore. And people are frightened about that.
Yeah. It's a loss of, I mean, at the top for the oligarchs, I think you've written about, how we turn to corporations. For the oligarchies at the top, I mean, they're definitely panicked. It's money and power. That's what makes this country go around. Let me ask you this:
in this country without a dollar.
Exactly. That's what I have a joke there somewhere, but I don't think I want to use it on the show. Nothing moves without a dollar. There you go. I like that. You should make shirts of that. Nothing moves without a dollar in America. How did the bees? The bees are not all right. Did they have anything to do with Trump, or was that the standalone essay? I'm curious.
No, that was standalone. It was by reader request. Someone asked me to write about bees. At the time I wrote that essay in 2014, we were just discovering some of the issues with neonicotinoid pesticides. And these pesticides, what they do is they take the seed of a plant, corn, for example, and they coat the outside of it with pesticide so that as the plant grows, the pesticide becomes a part of the plant and kills anything that tries to eat it.
Oh, wow.
Well, this is great for farmers because it reduces insects and all this type of thing. It's very bad for bees because these pesticides get into the pollen and goes back to their beehive and causes bee colony collapse.
Oh, wow. So that was what was causing it, huh?
One of the many factors. There's basically three factors. One was pesticides. Two was a new breed of varroa mite that likes to live in beehives. And then three was some beekeeping practices around flooding hives with sugar water in the winter to keep hives going.
Wow.
However, in Europe, the EU banned neonicotinoid pesticides, and bee populations increased 70% in 1 year.
Holy crap.
It was a bee bonanza. Yes. So the fact that, we're still allowing the use of these pesticides in this country is actively damaging our ecology. And it's not as big a story now as it once was, but there was a time 4 or 5 years ago when everybody was talking about falling bee populations, falling insect populations, all this type of thing. So that I felt that essay was a great companion to my viral essay on genetically modified foods, because I had just talked about the dangers of pesticides and how we needed to use GMOs not to increase pesticide use, but to decrease pesticide use. And then the bees are not all right is kind of like, and in case you want to know why we need less pesticides, let me let you know, it's not good for other things.
Yeah, it's amazing how much kind of crap is in our world. Let's talk about your next book that you put out. This is on January 6, 2020. Cast Iron, and it was a novel, I guess.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Tell us about that.
Yes.
What motivated you want to write it? What's inside of it?
Oh, this book has a very interesting story. So if you read the epilogue in the back, I actually write out the interaction of how I got this story. When I was 19 years old, I was working at a barbecue shop, and this guy who was one of my helpers told me, like, we ended up back at his place one night after work, and we were drinking and talking, and he was telling me kind of his life story. And his life story was the motivation for this book. So the book, very simply, is about a young man named Randy Carruth. he kills his stepfather with a cast iron frying pan for molesting his sister and his life afterwards.
Wow.
Yes. And that was based upon this young man's life.
Mm.
And so it took me a very long time to write. I got that story in 2007. I wrote the first 50 pages, I think, somewhere around 2010, and didn't release the book until 2 years ago. So it was the first book when I started writing seriously in 2014 after a magazine that I was working at collapsed. It was the project I kind of returned to. I always wanted to tell the story because I always thought it was fascinating how, one day you're just going to high school and the next day you're in juvie and you're in a whole other world. And then when you leave out of that place, there's no transition, there's no help. You're just kind of left to the world and what might happen. And I also found his attitudes on sex, sexuality, and race to be very interesting. He was extremely homophobic while having done homosexual things himself. So in the book, I play with that a lot, kind of that tension. And for me, that was really what I wanted to explore, because I think it's a problem faced by many more men than would ever admit it. So I wanted to kind of explore that space.
Interesting. I mean, it's quite the road he goes down.
Yes.
He kind of almost has that. Who's that guy who killed somebody? I'm thinking of the movie with a famous actor. But he basically kills his stepfather, then goes into prison, and which is an interesting twist of irony. And then he ends up living this life and deals with it and reconciles it. Do you see him being used in future novels or future books? Is he a character that you're going to move forward with, or is that just a standalone novel?
No, very standalone on that one. Very standalone. I know everybody these days wants a series or all this type of thing, but no, his story is quite concluded. His story was really about dealing with himself, his mother, the choices she made, the sacrifices she was willing to make for certain things, all this sort of thing. At the end of the book, he joins a mobile harvester company and starts harvesting wheat and corn and other agricultural products and all that type of thing. And I envision him, like I would envision him living someplace in semi-rural America, nice wife, nice kids, decent house, 2 cars, and living his life, doing his thing, kind of being a working class blue collar guy. And I think people don't understand how these moments, these one singular day, can change the course of your whole life.
That's very true.
His life would have been very different if that day had never happened.
Definitely. And evidently he acted thinking he was defending someone out of justice and ends up, paying a price for it. And there's some sort of, I think, irony in that.
Yes. Well, then the great thing about this is the novel's a page turner, because I'm very brief. I don't bore you with a lot of details. The whole book is only 54,000 words. It's about, I think, 217 pages. So it's a quick, fast read. It can be a bit tough because we go through all the vices. I'm talking sex in hotel rooms, passing bad checks, drugs, drug dealing, getting jumped by guys on a road for drug. I mean, we really go into the very seedier side of life. So if you're not ready for that journey, Cast Iron may not be for you. Go buy an unfinished coloring book. That's nicer.
There you go.
But like if you're ready for that kind of, if you enjoyed The Wire, Breaking Bad, stuff like that, then this book is for you.
Oh,
we really kind of go there.
I love Breaking Bad because you just never knew. Like it would just every time you're like, yeah, these guys have really gotten worse. It's gotten more crazy, more hectic, more dangerous.
Yeah,
and they just go like next level, and you're just like, what the hell?
Yes, it can.
And they just keep getting themselves out of it.
Yeah, that is exactly what happens in Cast Iron. When you think things can't get any worse or more weird or more crazy or whatever have you, we just lower the bar.
It's
So
weird, crazy turns and twists. There you go.
yes.
So
Yes.
this other book you put out March 15th, 2020, an unfinished coloring book. We don't have many authors. We have a lot of authors on the show. We never had one that does a coloring book, but this is not a coloring book. Do I have that understanding correct?
That is right. There's nothing to color in. Although someone did ask if I should release a coloring book version of the short story collection. And I'm like, I don't think anyone would be interested in that, but that's a
You could
cute
call
idea.
it book 2, finished coloring book or something. I don't know.
Yes.
So talk to us about what's in the unfinished coloring book, but which
So
is clearly because it's published.
Yes, an unfinished coloring book. So the title is inspired. I'm a person. I have enjoyed coloring since I was a child. I do some adult coloring when I can as a relaxation thing. I never finish coloring books. I had no clue what to title this book, so I decided to do some coloring about it. And I was flipping through one of the big coloring books I have, and I'm kind of like, I am never ever gonna finish this thing. I said, I always have piles of unfinished coloring books. And I was kind of like, Eureka, a cry of joy, a moment of discovery. And so I tried it out, and I got into Illustrator, and I was doing the graphics, different fonts. I'm kind of like, oh, I like that. An unfinished coloring book. That sounds really cool. Very erudite, very literary. And this was to really elevate me as a writer, and to kind of, take me to the next level. As this collection came out, I got published in 34th Parallel Literary Magazine, very big publication in print for photo spread of myself, all this type of thing. And everything would have gone perfectly if it hadn't been for the damn COVID-19. And so,
you picked some weird dates to publish, January 6th, and then the start of COVID.
I had forgotten that I released Cast Iron on January 6th. I had totally, until you brought it up right now, I knew it was January, but I had forgotten that was the day I let it out. Like, my book release timing is terrible.
Can you let me know when your next book release date is? Because I'm going to hide under the bed.
I will be there with you. It's yes. I know I'm very frightened now. I'm releasing 2 books in October, and it seems like whatever date I pick is gonna be not good.
That's when the aliens come, probably. I think.
Yeah, we're gonna have UFOs, or I live in Seattle. We're gonna have an earthquake, something. I don't know.
I think the only plague that hasn't come are the aliens, and we've had locusts. I'm not sure. I think we've covered all the plagues.
Frogs. Yeah. We can still go through frogs and death of the firstborn. So,
I'm the firstborn. That's not going to work out good for me.
Oh well, I'm not.
Count for babies.
Nope. I'm not for any of my parents, so I'm off the hook. So I'll be here. But yes, it's
I'm screwed.
Actually, it's funny. My mom and my stepdad are both oldest of their family, so I would instantly have no parents.
Oh wow.
So yes, my mother's the oldest of 4, and my dad's the oldest of 3.
Maybe you should really think about publishing those books.
I know. It's terrible, but
that would suck if you're like, remember when you were a kid and there was that step on your crack, break your mom's back, and you would, you'd avoid all the cracks. Yeah. Like, oh man, I like my mom. I don't want to hurt my mom.
I know.
And you publish that book, and you're like, holy shit, that completely backfired.
I know. I should just try to take the world by surprise and just not put any dates and just wake up one morning and press publish. And that way the world will not have had time to get anything set up.
I'll give you a title for your book. This title has no publishing date.
Yes. That's very good. That's very good.
That sounds like a safe bet.
Very good. Yeah. But if you want some fun, interesting short stories, definitely go check out an unfinished coloring book, because there's just some really fun and interesting stuff in there. We have a story about the California housing crisis, which was published in 34th Parallel Magazine, called Beverly Gardens. There's a really fun story that takes place right here in Seattle called The Ticket, about a man who wins the lottery but has to turn in the ticket before 5 o'clock. And then there's also another fun one that people really like called America Discount World. It's set 25 years in the future. And it is about a man whose business is selling off American cultural artifacts, posters,
Okay.
iPods, technology, kitsch, all this type of thing to overseas buyers. And he spends an afternoon with a reporter from the Seattle Stranger Times, and then they end up. She talks about her divorce. He talks about his business. They end up having sex. It's fun times.
It's fun time. We hopefully usually, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He lives in a houseboat on South
Sex
Lake Union.
usually,
It's fun times. Yeah.
hopefully, sex is usually fun times. It's supposed to be.
Yes.
You know,
So,
unless
but
you're,
it's great. Yeah, the short stories are all easy to read and put them down.
I like some of the titles of these: "The Kingdom of Nordstrom," "America's Discount World," "The Classy Drug Dealer." Let's see, what else do we have? "Windswept Wastes." That sounds like my bedroom. Let's see, "The RKO Killer." That's kind of interesting. So you have a whole mess of essays. These are kind of very different than your first book, "What the Hell is Going On," where you're just writing great short stories that are interesting fiction sort of stuff. Short stories. Cameron, I think you locked up. In fact, I'm pretty sure you locked up. Should have Cameron back here. Here he is. Hello, Cameron.
I'm so sorry about that. We have great internet in downtown Seattle. Can't you tell?
Yeah, there you go. You would think Seattle's kind of isn't that a technological hub? Microsoft is there. I mean,
They're over in Bellevue on the other side of Lake Washington.
okay.
Yeah. We have CenturyLink is real big up here, and they're not the best. They're not great.
Yeah,
they have them
the thing. So where were we? I think we.
I was just saying, like,
minutes.
yes, with the short story collection, the great thing about it is it's easy. Like, you can pick one up, read it, put it down, not touch the book for 3 months, pick up, read another one, all this type of thing. So it's easy, it's convenient. The stories are a lot easier, a lot more fun, not nearly as hot and heavy as cast iron. So it's sometimes a lot more accessible for people who want to get into my work. And yeah, so I would just, they're all available on Barnes and Noble, Amazon. They're both available in paper and ebook. Overseas, if you're in the UK or Australia, check out your local bookstore, your local major bookstores there online, because I'm there as well. Waterstone's in the UK. So so it's just a great way to get into it. And I have a little bit of fiction on the Cameron Journal, and I am trying to finally get my Amazon sort of spoof serial soap opera called The Department Store launch sometime this fall. So we're going to bring more fiction and fun to the Cameron Journal in the future. So yeah.
Nice. So let me ask you this. You have 2 new books coming out. Do we want to plug those, tease them out?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So there's a new edition of What the Hell is Going On coming out, including 2 new essays, which I'm going to look at them right now because I don't remember all the titles of them. We're going to have a couple new essays, including Hacker World, Cybersecurity in the 21st Century, Autocracy American Style, and the Christian Nationalism essay that was originally published in Rouges. So, yeah. And then all the old essays that are from the first book have been revised and updated for 2022.
Oh, nice. I mean, there's all that stuff that you wrote about has definitely been changing and evolving and expanding or contracting, or I don't know.
Oh, yes. Oh, it's been a long 7-8 years since I wrote some of those. So some of the older ones. So
and you write about how a lot of this began about 40 years ago, which a lot of people don't realize what the origins are of white nationalism and everything else.
Yes. I mean, a lot of the problems we're living in today really kind of came to the fore in the early 1980s. And my other book, America's Lost Generation, where I write about how our society has left millennials behind, really puts that in sharp focus. In the 1950s, after World War II, the American right was on its back heels after 15 years of Democratic control of the White House, Congress, and the Senate. They hadn't been in power since before the Great Depression. And in the 1950s, because of all the reforms of the New Deal and how involved in society government had become, fearing communism, they wanted to kind of dismantle the reforms of the New Deal.
Mhm.
So the Federalist Society, the John Birch Society, all this type of thing would eventually go on to spawn Ronald Reagan, the Koch brothers. It would manifest itself politically in evangelicalism with Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson. All of this energy starts in the early to mid 1950s.
Wow.
Then the 60s happen, and the culture is moving in a completely other direction. And so much of what happened after the 60s was in reaction to all of those changes. That's where we get evangelicalism becoming political. That's where we get, rejection of the Great Society reforms, all this type of thing, the election of Richard Nixon. And by the mid 70s, the it's kind of interesting how after Watergate, Republicans really shouldn't have been in power for a generation. They were only out of power for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because Nixon had done two very smart things. He had gotten all the Southern racists to vote GOP, causing a massive titanic political American shift out of the Democratic Party towards the Republican Party. And the very smart thing, even though he agreed with Barry Goldwater, he did not reject the new evangelical politic.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of embraced it. Arm's length, but kind of embraced it. And that really set up the GOP to take power 6 years later in 1980.
Yeah, the Great Southern Strategy.
Yes, and so, honestly, without Richard Nixon, you would have never gotten to Ronald Reagan. Really, Nixon laid the foundation. Really, without embracing evangelicalism, which Barry Goldwater thought was nuts, and without the Southern Strategy, Reagan probably would have never won in 1980.
That's true.
The world would be a very different place. But that everything that's happened in the last 40 years kind of got all set up then. And we've just been living in the consequences of it, from mental health issues, gun rights, no-fault divorce, education policy, mental health, lack of mental health institutions. Like this, there's nothing that's going on today that was not intentionally created. This is not by accident, folks.
Yep. There's a lot of people who don't understand that.
Yes.
They just think, well, we're having a bad day. And I don't think they understand the forces that were behind all that, like the Betsy DeVos Center for National Policy, her organizations, 250 umbrella organizations underneath her. Yeah. People have no idea the insidious hands and fingers that are behind all of this. And then, of course, the SCOTUS rulings, which I think you've written about. Yes. As we go out, anything more?
Vallejo. Yes. Citizens United. Money in politics has made all of this worse, and it has allowed our democracy to be bought and sold as a commodity. First essay of What the Hell is Going On, How We the People Became We the Corporation. I talk about how corporations are the new aristocracy, and the rest of us have been bought and sold. And it's quite frightening.
Definitely. So as we go out, anything more we want to plug?
No. I'm out of things. We've plugged all the books I've written, website, podcast, and no, everything is great. But thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I hope a couple of your listeners kind of float over to the Wild World of the Cameron Journal and check us out. We're having fun over here. So
there you go. And you write about a lot of stuff. Give us the .coms if you would, so people can find those on the interwebs.
Yes. So the master control for it all is CameronJournal.com. That's Cameron like the actress, journal.com. And then on Twitter at Cameron Cowan, and same thing for Instagram. And everything is posted there. But if you need links to any of my socials, CameronJournal.com. Podcast, same thing. And then, of course, all the wonderful content. There are, as of this morning, 773 individual pieces of content.
Holy crap. That's quite
No
extraordinary.
shortage of things to read.
There you go. There
Yes.
you go. It's
Yes.
funny how you start these things. How long ago did you start that, by the way?
I started in 2014.
Wow. Isn't it funny how you
Yes.
start these things and then you look back and you're just like, holy crap.
No, I know, very true. And I left the business for 2 years.
Yeah.
In 2016, I was tired, I was broke, I was out of money, needed to kind of recover. I shut everything down, archived the website, which was CameronCowan.net back then, and the Cameron Cowan Show. And I thought I was done. I thought I was out of this business. I went back to work, got a couple jobs, made some money, paid off credit cards, all this type of thing. When one of the businesses I was working for went under, someone was like, well, maybe you should get back into the content game because, you know, all this type of thing. And so I did, but I said this time I want to make money at it. And so I kind of built the new platform from the ground up to make money. And so I focused on that, and that gave me the chance to focus on books and building up the brand. And now here we are. So
There you go. There you go. Well,
yeah,
thank
now
you
we're
very
talking
much
to nice
for
folks like you. We've done well.
Well, I mean, let's not push it, nice folks like me. I mean, we're making a grand assumption. It's been wonderful to have you on the show and very insightful, Cameron. Thank you for coming on.
Of course. Thank you so much, Chris. Have a good afternoon.
There you go. And to my audience, go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, hit the bell notification button, goodreads.com/Chris Voss, see everything we're reading and reviewing over there. It's Friday. Go to all of our groups, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, the big LinkedIn newsletter, subscribe to that, and the big LinkedIn group, 120,000 people over there on LinkedIn. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.